I don't spit ill, I eat well. Juice and greens daily, that's the deal. You might find me chewing on some dill. You never find me swallowing no pills, and that's real. Wake up in the morning, superfood smoothie. Some food got my energy feeling good. See, I used to eat meat, but you know that that's the old me. Now I stay connected to this earth like I'm an old tree. Rishi Goji, come on man, you know me. Push those herbs to calm your nerves like I'm an OG. Come see me, I stopped watching TV. Got my education on YouTube University. Shout out to all my people who eatin' all organic. Shout out to all my yogis who breathe slow and don't panic. Shout out to urban farmers, my vertical gardener. Shout out to all my people who eatin' all in season, cause we know the reason. Keep on keeping it real. I know my health is wealth, I'll keep stacking that kale. You got some spleen pain, it's just a cheap thing. We got them yin and yang herbs out the yin yang. You got some spleen pain, it's just a cheap thing. We got them yin and yang herbs out the yin yang. You think that it's natural to get sick chewing on a breadstick? Listen quick and get up on this health tip. Your body is more important than the clothes you wear. Focus on your mind more than what goes in your hair. Humanity got lost in vanity, but if you eat beautiful foods, then beauty comes naturally. Stop eating goods manufactured in a factory, processed to the point devoid of all vitality. You're counting calories while they grow their salaries from GMO celery that's giving people allergies. That's not a metaphor or an analogy. You are what you eat, don't sleep, that's a reality. You reap what you sow, you're more than you know. Look around at the ground, it's profound how the flowers grow. You reap what you sow, you're more than you know. Look around at the ground, it's profound how the flowers grow. You got some spleen pain, it's just a cheap thing. We got them yin and yang herbs out the yin yang. You got some spleen pain.
A young lady who I was following on Instagram, Naked Cactus. She was doing the most delicious fried jackfruit. So I went to go and see her a few weeks ago, found out that this event was happening, and thankfully came down. It's been amazing. So today we're going to be doing some interviews with some of the stall holders. We're going to be listening to some of the workshops, and definitely be going around sampling the food and finding out what the people in the
So I'm Serita. I live in Forest Hill, not that far away from here, so South London, but I'm originally from Edinburgh, born and raised, but I'm half Indian, half Scottish. So the food I'm going to be doing today is the food that I grew up with, which was Indian. My dad was a chef, an Indian chef, and he sort of taught me a lot of what I know, so hopefully some of that will come through in the few dishes that we'll do today.
Before we start, I just wanted to remind people to use a hashtag, which was UKVOC, and hashtag Vegans of Colour. So if you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, just use any of those hashtags. So you're just going to get started. I'm going to try and turn this up a bit. I think that should be fun. So what are you going to be cooking today?
First thing I'm going to cook is chana sag, which is chickpea and spinach. I thought I'll keep it super simple because we don't have long, and this is like super basic, so like anyone can do this recipe. So the first thing we're going to do actually is put in, so we're going to turn it on. We're going to just dry fry some mustard seeds and some cumin seeds. So we dry fry them just so that they release some of the flavours. And then after that, we'll add a little bit of water or oil, and then you add your onion, white onion, some of it I've pre-diced, the rest I'll dice just now, and the garlic as well. So I'll just start with that and you can chat.
Yeah. So I guess growing up with a parent who was a chef, how important was cooking in your households on a daily basis?
It was super important. Basically, my dad, he just always made sure that like we had like a fresh meal. He would go out to work quite a lot as a chef. It was quite stressful sometimes, but I kind of didn't necessarily like pay attention that much to begin with. And then he would be like, Junior, come into the kitchen. You need to learn how to make pakora, and you need to learn profit margins, and it cost me 12p for the ingredients, and how much is the gas? And I'd be like, I don't know. And, you know, he'd be like getting me. I was working in his kitchens from young. But yeah, so like eating, we didn't necessarily eat together in a very traditional way, like a lot of Indian families would, because he was always out cooking. But it sort of is something that has always come back to me. And like cooking these dishes is something that I like to do to like remember him, if you know what I mean.
So she's currently dry roasting the seeds and spices if you can't see what's going on in the pot. So I guess your dad, he was a chef. What type of chef was he?
So mainly Indian food. being Indian, but he faced quite a lot of discrimination when he first came to the UK. People wouldn't give him jobs. They'd be like, we don't want curry, we don't want your food, we don't want food from people like you. And he was like, I can cook anything. And so he like proved a lot of people wrong by like cooking like Western food or like food from like all around the world.
He had his own restaurant in Scotland.
Yeah, so he actually opened Scotland's first Nepalese restaurant, because where he's from in India is like the foothills of the Himalayas. But he also worked in like a lot of different restaurants. He had a lot of like quite unsuccessful businesses over the years, but like some of them were more successful. And he worked in like hotels and stuff as well.
So he was specifically from that Nepalese region of India?
Yeah, from like the Himalayas, so really near the border.
So I guess for like a continent of 1 billion people, basically, Indian food, like Chinese food and African food, always gets put into one pot. And I just wondered what your perception was of like British Indian food, and maybe how you're looking to change what people think it is and what it can be.
That's a really good question, because there's no right way to do an Indian dish. Like, there's no right way to probably do a lot of dishes from around the world. Like, the way I will do like a chana masala is different than the way someone from the Gujarat might do it, or someone from the Punjab. Like, yes, there's ways you can do it more authentically, and yes, there's times that I might be a bit like, oh, that's not the right way. But equally, it's family recipes, isn't it? Like, you know what you know. The food is quite different in North India than it is in South India. It's like sort of fresher, more coconut in the south, curry leaves. Some parts of India are really vegetarian, some parts aren't. So yeah, it's really diverse.
Part of your childhood, vegetarian?
Actually, I went vegetarian when I was 8, and then I went vegan about 5 years ago. My dad wasn't a vegetarian, even though he was like a sort of high caste Hindu. But he just sort of accepted it and cooked my sister and him like a chicken dish, and then cooked me like dal and vegetable, which we'd have anyway, and because it's cheap, like it's kind of what we had to survive off. I just added a bit of oil to the pan. I normally cook with water nowadays more than oil, but I've got oil here, and also I just thought it might work better with this pan. And once the oil's a bit hotter, the seeds are crackling up a bit, then I'll add the white onion and the garlic.
Is that a conscious decision to stop using oil, or?
Kind of, like, you don't need oil. Like, growing up with Indian food, it's super oily and super salty, and like, it's easy to use it. But like, every spoon of oil is like an extra like 120 calories or something. Like, I'm not a calorie counter, but if you don't need the oil, don't use it. But also, it does really help. But I wouldn't say I don't use oil, but I cut down on how much oil. There's some dishes like pakora, you have to deep fry them. You know, some stuff, exactly. I'm half Scottish, half Indian. I like to deep fry stuff.
So do you want to just explain like what this process does for the spices?
Yeah, so basically we're tempering the spices. So the mustard seeds and the cumin seeds, and it basically helps them like release their aroma. What I quite like to do with cumin seeds as well, in some dishes, is to dry roast them and then ground them myself. Because when you roast cumin seeds, you get that like earthy, rich, like you'll smell it, and then that creates such a different flavour for your cumin seeds. And even though it's a bit more of a long process, I much prefer to do that for some dishes. So if I have time, I might make a yogurty dish called raita, and that's how I would traditionally do the jeera, which is cumin seeds.
So when did you move from Scotland down to London?
I moved 7 years ago. I'd always wanted to live in London from like quite young, and we used to come down here to see like aunties and stuff. And then my dad actually was quite ill when I was a student, and then he died the year before I moved here. And so basically I was looking after him, and was quite sort of like had to be in Scotland. I'm adding more oil, like, and basically, yeah, the year after he passed away, I decided to move down. So I got a job and came down. But I'm glad I sort of moved when I was a bit older, because it meant I was like maybe a bit more like sensible. Yeah.
So how would you compare like London's reception to international cuisine versus where you grew up?
There's definitely a lot more of it here. Now when I go back to Scotland, I grew up in Edinburgh, so like it is a cosmopolitan city. But it's still quite like traditional. Like my sister, who still lives there, I took her to Sweden a couple of weeks ago for her birthday. She's older than me. And we went out for dinner, we went for Vietnamese food, and she'd never had Vietnamese food. And like, that's because they don't have as much different food in Edinburgh. There's Chinese, there's Thai, there's Scottish, there's not like Jamaican or Caribbean. My sister would not have had a lot of the food here. And she knows some Asian food, but not much, you know. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more here, and I do love that. So with this, the onions are beginning to brown a little bit. I'm just going to brown them off a bit more.
Speaking to the Scottish side of your heritage, how would you categorise that experience in food growing up?
I really like chips. Like, I didn't really eat traditional Scottish food because my dad brought me up and he was Indian. We ate either like really nice Indian food or like oven food, you know, like waffles and stuff. But yeah, like I used to go to the chip shop at lunchtime, eat like they do deep fry pizza in Scotland, and it is delicious. And there's a place in Glasgow that does it vegan, and it is delicious. But yeah, like I do love like making a vegan haggis. Like that is something. It's like lentils and nuts and stuff.
Did you ever have the experience at school, like packed lunches, where you had brought your home food in, and was that ever part of your childhood?
Yeah, my dad used to make us onion sandwiches. So yeah, we were really cool at school. But yeah, so we didn't. Yeah, it was a bit strange. I'm adding some ground coriander. I'm gonna add some ground cumin. This is garam masala. So I make my own garam masala because I think the stuff they sell in packets tastes not very nice. I make it different every time, but I basically ground up spices in a thing like this. This one, I think, has got coriander, cumin, cloves, ginger, cardamom, and turmeric.
It's mainly for the taste that you do it yourself.
The stuff. So, like this is Natco. I buy most of my spices next door in Cannes Bargains anyway. So I do buy like these packet spices, but I find the garam masala one just a bit. There's something I just don't like about it. So I just think this is like more like an authentic flavour, but you can buy the packet ones. And I don't really necessarily measure. Like I do have this written down, measured out. There is an official rule if I was to like have to give it to someone, but I do most things by like taste. But yeah, it's pretty much like this is about a 2 to 4 person portion, and it's about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon depending on the spice. With the turmeric, always put less because it's quite a bitter taste. It's mainly there for colour. It doesn't add like tons and tons of flavour, and add that bit by bit. But things like turmeric really need to cook out. If you taste something too soon with turmeric in it, it'll just taste bitter.
So do you want to talk about maybe the ease behind this food? A lot of people are kind of daunted by certain foods, and how easy do you think a lot of this food is to cook at home or like after a long day at work?
Yeah, I think it's definitely subjective. Like I love cooking. Like I find it really cathartic. So this is kind of like the colours you want it, a sort of like yellowy colour. Yeah, gold. And if you need to take away the stickiness, just a bit of water, a bit of oil. Yeah, like I think the thing is, so I'm adding like onions and stuff to this. You could do this just with chickpeas, just with spinach and some spices. Onions and garlic adds time. Also, a lot of people don't eat onions and garlic. I also prep in advance, so like, or I bulk cook. So like, if I make a dish like this, I make a lot of it. I portion it up, I freeze it. Things like dal, you can put dal on, which is just literally lentils and spices. Put that in a pot, leave it, come back. You've got your food for a week.
What's the best way to warm it up? Do you use microwave?
Yeah, you can, or just like put it in a small pot. So I'm putting 1 tin of tomatoes in. You could also, again, use fresh tomatoes. I do have fresh tomatoes.
Chopped tomatoes?
Yeah, chopped in a tin. But they're just quicker, they're easier. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. And then with tomatoes in a curry, what you kind of want, if you've used oil, is you want to cook it until you can sort of see the oil come to the surface. Or until the colour changes, until it goes like a deeper red.
Being in London, have you found that you've been influenced by any other kind of international food that you didn't maybe experience growing up?
Yeah, like there's a lot of it that I love Ethiopian food. I'd never had Ethiopian or Eritrean food until I came to London. And I suppose I'm a bit more, like I don't just eat like Indian food or cook curry at home. So I probably do try and cook things. I've never tried to make Ethiopian food actually. But yeah, I'm definitely like, I like to eat at places I've never been before and try lots of different places.
Do you have any favourite spots in London?
Oh, I feel under pressure now. Well, thinking of Ethiopian, there's a couple. There's one in Brixton Market that's quite good, but my favourite one is actually in Kentish Town. I think it's called Lalibela. Yeah, that's really good. And there's a really nice one called Karen View on Holloway Road as well, which is really nice. She's lovely. And then I'm trying to think where I've been really recently that I love.
You want to kind of explain what's going on in the pot now?
Yeah, so the tomato's just cooking. It's just basically going to cook down. I'm going to actually leave that and we're going to make a coriander chutney. So I'm just going to... So if you've got like one of these, they're super easy. It means you can make any chutney really quickly.
What is the chutney for the people who might not know?
So a chutney is basically just a sauce or a dip. So I'm going to do a yogurty one hopefully, and I'm going to do this coriander one. And this is just a really nice way to like add a bit of a zing or a flavour to your dish and have it on the side. I'm going to use the...
So you got lemon.
Very safe. I'm not doing this in the most safe way. Don't do it like this at home, kids. But yeah, basically juicing the lemon. I'm going to add coriander, a bit of cumin and a bit of salt. I might put a little bit of oil in it just because I don't have tons of lemon. And I might put a bit of chilli in it as well. And because this is like almost like a NutriBullet, it will just zoosh it up really quickly. I would normally do this with a fork or with an actual blender, but...
half a lemon that you're using. You can use the other half.
About half a bunch of coriander, and you don't. If you've got like a decent blender like this, you don't need to chop it that well because it'll just do it for you.
It's possible to do this without a blender.
This one you could do it with a pestle and mortar. You could chop it all really finely, but it wouldn't be as fine. The other one I'm going to do not with a blender because that's the way like I learned it when I was little. I didn't have a blender when I was little, so things like this is quite exciting to me. It's like toys.
I don't think anyone really had a blender. Right?
No, yeah, probably not. I might put a bit of chili in this just to see what happens.
So specifically green chilies on this, or does it matter?
Green mainly for the colour, but also just a bit of heat. I'm just going to put half a chili in because it's going to be raw. I'm going to put the rest of the lemon in.
So is the pot something that you need to tend to every once in a while to just keep stirring it? Or?
Yeah. So with any food, like, so I'm a sort of I like to be doing like several things at once when I'm cooking. So I'll usually be cooking about 3 dishes at once, but just always kind of knowing what's going on. And that's the joy of like doing like Indian food and sort of. And also just cooking with vegetables and stuff. You can just sort of be as creative as you want and just sort of have several things on the go. And the way I see it is there isn't necessarily like a right or wrong way to do it. And as long as you sort of, everyone's got taste buds, right? And as soon as you can figure out what something particular tastes like, if you just sort of start identifying different spices, then you'll be able to know how to adjust it yourself. And I think that's like where it comes from.
Just lemon and coriander.
Add in 1 tin of chickpeas.
Straight from the can.
I've drained them already. I usually have at home like dried chickpeas, and I will soak them in advance as well. They're like a much cheaper way to do it, but it's not necessarily as convenient.
How long do you leave them to soak?
Well, for chickpeas you can cook them immediately, but I would normally soak them like, they just take a long time. I normally soak them overnight, but if it's like 4 hours, but you can soak up the you can speed up the soaking process by doing it in warm water. I'm gonna put both tins of chickpeas in just because we've got them, and it'll go further if people want a taste, and I can add more tomato if I want, but that looks like a good consistency. Yeah, so this just needs to cook. This chickpea curry is almost done. I'm just gonna let it cook down and then I'll add some spinach. It probably... the chickpea curry is pretty much done. I've just added a little bit more garam masala and cumin. I'm just going to add the spinach. So I'm just lightly chopping it, but you can also just tear it or just chuck it in if it's baby spinach.
So this dish, you cook it fully open, you don't need to cover it at any time?
No, because it's quite a quick dish to make. The chickpeas and the spinach don't really need that much cooking. If it was something, so you could also add like butternut squash, sweet potato or potato to this, and if you did that, you would do that earlier on in the process, or you could parboil the potatoes, and you would cook them out.
What type of heat are you cooking on it?
It should be a medium heat, but this induction hob isn't like the strongest, so it's on max, but it is, I would say that's quite a medium flame. And again, like all Indian dishes, there's like slight variations in how it's made. Some people don't use mint, some people do. Some people add lemon juice, some people don't. Some people don't put in any spices.
So do you find a lot of the dishes that you cooked at home with your parents were like they were different when you went to auntie's house? They cooked it differently.
Yeah, well, basically, like everywhere will have it quite different. So I don't actually have any Indian family in the UK because they're all in India. But when I have gone to India, the way that my uncle cooks is the same way that my dad cooked, which is really weird because they hadn't seen each other for like 50 years. So with the kachumber, I pre-prepped most of this earlier, but I'm just going to mix equal parts of cucumber, tomato, and red onion together. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of coriander and mint.
Do you grow any spices at home yourself?
No, yeah, I've got a garden, but it's not very good. This looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Want to taste while you go along?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely needs more salt.
So as much as it tastes good, would you champion like the health benefits of the style of cooking that you do?
So one thing I'm quite into, trying to learn a lot more about at the moment, is Ayurvedic cooking. And Ayurveda is like the sort of traditional Indian way of cooking.
Natural healing.
Yeah, natural healing. It's interesting because they really advocate for the use of ghee, and so which is essentially butter. And you know, one of the things that I was trying to follow recently was like increase your intake of ghee by a spoon every mealtime, and I was like, no thanks. They also don't tend to use oil and garlic and onion as much, so like I had to cut back on that. I hadn't used onion until yesterday for a couple of weeks, which is quite new for me in like Indian cooking. But the one thing with Ayurvedic cooking is like it tells you what you should and shouldn't eat based on your body type, and it tells me that I shouldn't eat all the things that I like, which is why I like them, because they do bad things to me. But yeah, I definitely understand that like food is healing, food is power, food is energy. So that's why I prefer like whole food, plant-based, as opposed to like necessarily like mock meats and stuff. Like I do have time for that, but when I cook like this. I'm gonna put the chickpea curry into this bowl, and then we're gonna make the potatoes in here, and they will be super quick because I pre-boiled the potatoes.
So you don't clean the pot, you just work with that and put the simmer.
I'm just going to wipe it down with this. This isn't a real kitchen, if anyone could tell. So I'm just going to clean the pot with this. It's essentially all the same spices. The only thing that is in this pot that wouldn't be is tomato. So basically, this is really simple. I pre-boiled these potatoes earlier. They're just like regular potatoes cut into like quarters, and then just boil them, and wash them, then boil them, and then we're just going to make a sort of spice mix, and then chuck the potatoes in. So about a tablespoon of oil. Let that heat up, and then we'll add in our mustard seeds, which is like the main flavour in this dish.
So what type of oil are you using, by the way?
Just vegetable oil, yeah.
Is that what you would usually use?
Just standard vegetable oil. Get that over there. Okay, so with mustard seeds, you always know they're ready when they start popping, and sometimes they do pop out the pan, but then that means you know that you can like get the next thing in there.
So how important is it to kind of keep up the cultural heritage of the food that you grew up with, like alive for future generations?
I think it's super important. It's something that my sister and I have got quite different attitudes on. She couldn't chop like a piece of garlic. She used to phone me and my dad up and be like, "How do I do this?" And like he would laugh, but I could tell that like hurt his feelings a bit, because like he's a chef. He's travelled halfway across the world. He lives away from his like heritage. So for me, like I've definitely started embracing like a lot more of that in like more recent years, and I think like there's a lot of like the younger Indian community who don't know how to cook. Like I've got a lot of Indian friends who can't like, they wouldn't know how to do this or roll chapati or anything, and like I think it's important, like your food is your heritage, isn't it? I honestly just think like get to know like 1 or 2 herbs or spices that you love. You don't need to have, like I've only got about 6 spices here, but you don't even need as many as that. You could have like 2 spices and 1 herb. Like a lot of the time I just cook with like paprika and rosemary. Like that's super simple, do you know what I mean? You don't need a lot. Yeah. So I'd say just do that, and then like find the flavours that you like and sort of replicate them. Also again, maybe stick with like the veg that you know to begin with, and then like experiment with something different. But don't like be like, oh, I don't know what a fennel is, and then like try and cook with that, because then you're just going to be disappointed. And if you've had something somewhere that you like, try and maybe recreate that dish. I'm not salting this loads, there's just nothing coming out. So, I think most things are done. The only thing that I can't actually do is the cucumber and the yogurt one, because we don't have a grater. But I'm going to talk you through it because it's super, super simple, and I can't wash this either because we don't have a sink. But I do raita, it's called raita, R-A-I-T-A. Quite a specific way. I do it the way my dad taught me, and I don't like anyone else's raita. And I'll be very vocal about that. So basically, I do it with about half a tub of yogurt. I grew up making it with like cow's milk yogurt, but soy yogurt is just as good. I would grate in about 1/3 to 1/2 a cucumber, add in about half a handful of really finely chopped coriander, about 1/2 teaspoon of cumin powder, and then some salt, and then taste it. There might be times that I would add something like a bit of mustard or a bit of chilli to give it a kick, but it's meant to be like a cooling, refreshing dish. I'm just going to taste one of these potatoes.
Time limit on this that you do?
On the potatoes? So they're already par cooked, so just these aren't heated through yet, so really just till they heat through. The spices are pretty much cooked in there. They just need a little bit, it just needs to cook through a tiny bit longer. But I think once these last few spices have cooked through, we will be done. I'm going to see how this has gone on. And we do have little pots so people can come and taste.
So I guess, what would you speak to in terms of have you found a like-minded Indian cooking community since you've been in London?
Not necessarily. Like I don't necessarily not necessarily part of like a cooking community. But there's a lot of Indian food out there. But yeah, it's just, to be honest, I just like cooking my own food. I'm my father's daughter in that sense. you would take my dad to like an Indian restaurant and he would be like, this is rubbish. And I'm not saying that's what I think, but I'm definitely like quite a critic.
So what have you got in terms of the way that people can try your food?
I sometimes do like events, supper clubs, private catering. I'm going to be doing some cooking classes through Life After Hummus. And
What's that?
So Life After Hummus is a community like cooking project in North London, near Euston. And so they do community classes every Monday, and then they also do like guest chefs on Fridays and Saturdays. So they're at the moment just doing a series of chefs of colour. So I'm going to be doing an Indian class with them in November, the 15th, I think. And I'll be doing some cooking through Made in Hackney, but I'm not sure exactly when. And yeah, but basically through my like social is probably the best way to find out what I do. Right. I think most things are ready. Let's see if this is, I don't know if this is combined enough because we maybe didn't have enough liquid. Because we don't have a tap, I can't add water to anything either.
Yeah, so just about to can the curry and potatoes into these small pots, which you're welcome to come up and take.
Okay, so basically we've got little tasters if people want to come and get them. We've got the chickpea curry with the masala potato, and then on the side here is the coriander chutney and a little bit of the kachumber salad that you can add on. So feel free to come up and help yourselves.
Hi, I'm Miss T. I'm reporting for HMP TV. Today we're at the first Vegans of Colour event here in Peckham. With me I've got a lovely young lady. Her name is Serita. She's going to talk to us a little bit about her background, being a vegan, and how she's come to be at today's event. Hi Serita.
Hi there.
Are you nervous? Come closer. So, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background culturally, and how you've come to be here today.
Sure, so my name's Serita, I'm Scottish Indian, so my father was Indian and he was a chef, and over my sort of life I've eventually sort of become a part-time chef, so that's why I am here at the event. I cook Indian food, but I cook all sorts of food, and I'm also a vegan, and I'm quite active within the vegan scene within London, so I know one of the organisers, and she knows that I cook really delicious food, so she got me down to do a cooking demo.
Fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit about how you transitioned into becoming a vegan and how long that journey has been for you?
Yeah, sure. So I turned vegetarian when I was about 8 years old, because I put two and two together around the fact that pigs were bacon, and that made me like really upset as a sensitive child. A lot of children can kind of see that link a lot more, and so I always had the ethics and values of not wanting to harm animals, but I never quite let myself understand the dairy and the egg industry and the wool and the leather and all the other things around animal products. I sort of just ignored it, and then about 5 years ago I went vegan just sort of for a bit of a health challenge, to be honest, for a month, after having like a very indulgent holiday, and then I was like, wait a minute, this thing of me saying that I can't eat cheese is actually nonsense. I can eat cheese, or I can live without cheese, and actually I can try like a plant-based vegan diet. So I've been vegan for about 5 years, primarily for animals and the environment, but since then I've seen a lot of the health benefits as well.
Thanks for that. Can you tell us where you cook and what socials we can find you on if we want to come and taste your delicious food, please?
Sure. So I cook at different events, teaching classes. I don't have like a sort of setup anywhere particularly, but if you follow me on Instagram or Twitter, it's Serita Puri. So it's SARETAPURI, and that has everything of where I am and what I do.
Thank you very much, Serita. I hope to be tasting your delicious food again. It was amazing, just letting you know. And thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. So that was me, Miss T, for HMP TV. Bye. Wow, what an end to an amazing 2 days. This has been the last and final day of UK Vegans of Colour, the event. All I can say is that coming here today, covering this event has been the most edifying, not just for my stomach, obviously, but for my soul, for my spirit, because the food was definitely full of love, the environment even more so. Everybody here was here to support and to learn, and we learned so much. We learned women's panel today, that was amazing. We had a lovely lady who was all the way from Sudan, nutritionist. We have seen some gorgeous products. We have eaten some even more stunning looking food, and I'm really happy to be back on my journey as a vegan. I can honestly say that today has been an eye-opener in terms of our food and our culture. And, you know, it's not right. We have been at the forefront, as we are, for many of the things in this world. And due to racism and people having the privilege, we get pushed to the back. Well, you know, this time we've taken things into our own hands.